Hello and welcome to Fox 29's News Now on this Tuesday morning. We're going to get started with some political news. Democrats in Congress have set a deadline. They want to see the results of the special counsel's report from Robert Mueller to be released next week. President Trump says he has been exonerated, but as Fox News correspondent Doug Lozader reports from Washington this morning, his critics are not letting up.
That's my guess. Well, Democrats in Congress have set a deadline. Now I'm talking about Washington, D.C. They want the results of the Mueller special counsel probe released, and soon.
Meanwhile, President Trump has been saying that he's been exonerated, but his critics, Doug, they're not letting up.
They are not. They want this full report, Democrats do, released next week as opposed to just that four-page summary that we've seen so far. That may eventually happen. These congressional investigations are not going anywhere.
President Trump still reveling in the results of the now concluded Robert Mueller probe. In the Oval Office, he said he was open to its full release.
Up to the Attorney General. Wouldn't bother me at all.
And Democrats are demanding Robert Mueller's final product. So far, we've seen just a four-page summary from the Attorney General saying that there's no evidence of collusion with Russia and no firm conclusion as to whether the president obstructed justice. And even Republicans who backed the investigation say enough is enough.
It's over. It's time to move on. Like the old Willie Nelson song says, turn out the lights, the party's over.
We have to do proper oversight. That's our job, and we'll do it.
House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler says he will press forward with his own investigations into the president and wants to see what exactly Mueller came up with. But is there a risk of taking this too far?
Not if we do it right.
Some Republicans have already gone after California Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, who had said repeatedly for months before the report was released that there was evidence of collusion with Russia.
Adam Schiff should resign. He has no right as somebody who has been peddling a lie day after day after day, unchallenged and not under oath.
You know, I'm more than used to attacks by my GOP colleagues, and I would expect nothing less.
Now, we don't know when the full Mueller report is going to be released or if. It sounds like it will happen, at least portions of it will be released. The Attorney General, William Barr, is actually going to be here on Capitol Hill in 2 weeks. Unrelated matter, but he's almost certainly going to be asked about this. Mike and Alex.
Oh, yes.
I have a feeling it's going to come up.
Maybe first question. Doug, we'll see you again tomorrow.
And moving on to entertainment news, Apple is really taking over. Should Netflix, Visa, and the news all be afraid? From the Fox Business Network studios, Tracy Carrasco has more.
So Apple, they've been talking about it's showtime, and they're going to make their big announcement yesterday. And it turns out they're going on new streaming services.
Tracy, I mean, so Apple is creating their own television shows. Is that right?
Yep, they're going to have their own original content for the new streaming service. It's called Apple TV Plus. Yesterday at the Apple event, it looked more like a Hollywood red carpet than a major tech announcement. Really, there were stars like Oprah, Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon. All of them were promoting their shows that are going to be exclusive to this new Apple streaming service.
Oh
yep. So in addition to that, they have they'll be integrating live TV, cable TV, and the streaming service all in one platform. There's going to be kids content as well. They have partnerships with HBO, Showtime, Stars. So they're really trying to compete with Amazon, Hulu, Netflix. They're trying. A little late to the game, in my opinion, but they've got to do something to diversify their revenue stream as iPhone sales are kind of slowing down.
Yeah.
So they announced that. They also announced a credit card. Tim Cook seemed really excited about this one. This will be linked to your Apple Wallet. There are no annual fees, no late fees. Takes just minutes to sign up, and you'll be getting rewards, 2% back on whatever you spend, and those daily rewards get added to your wallet every single day.
Okay, so
that's kind of a nice feature.
So there are two A's taking over the world, Apple and Amazon. But tell me more about one of the TV shows that's being produced that has Jennifer Aniston in it, And who's the
Yep.
other one? And Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah.
Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon, Steve Carell. It is called The Morning Show, and it's a behind-the-scenes look at the morning news shows.
Well, how do they know?
Well,
Exactly. Did they
it's-
wake up at 2 a.m.? I'm not sure.
So it's a show that kind of is going to blow
About-
the lid off a show like Good Day Philadelphia.
That's what it sounds
Possibly,
like.
yes.
Yeah, well, listen to this, Tracy. We have an exclusive clip from the first episode of a show called The Morning Show. Here it is.
All right, Bob, you're first, then Sue. So what do you want to do?
I'll
What's
do-
the order
we'll
of
do
your
Matt,
things?
Hey, Bob Kelly, did you
Cy
use
Fox,
my
and then-
hairspray?
5 seconds.
I say there's a millimeter less than there was yesterday.
I use Aquanet. I don't use
Aquanet,
that
what is
stuff.
this, 1950?
Stand
All right, so
by.
we go 3, 2. Oh, hey, good morning, everybody.
So it's kind of a behind-the-scenes look at a morning show. This looks gritty.
It's going to expose all the
Very
secrets.
accurate.
Yeah, I guess so. Tracy, thank you. Apple's taken over the world.
And moving on to weather from your Fox 29 Weather Authority. The Philadelphia area is slated
So
for
Apple, they've been talking about it's showtime, and they're going to make their big
for a sunny Tuesday. Sorry about that, with cooler temperatures than we experienced Monday. Since rain left the region, cold air has moved in and winds have picked up. As a result, wind chills were in the 20s for some areas this Tuesday morning. And if we look at some current temperatures, we have a chilly 40 degrees in Toms River, 41 in Atlantic City, 41 Wildwood, and a very chilly 29 degrees in Mount Pocono. If we compare that to the rest of the Northeast, seeing about the same, and comparing it to the nation at large, we have an enviable 75 degrees in South Florida, 62 in Houston, only 50 in San Fran, 41 in Portland, which we'll see temperatures rising by the end of this week as we look at our 7-day forecast, warming up to a very decent 72 degrees this Saturday. And when the Phillies take the mound on Thursday for the Philadelphia Phillies home opener, we'll have nice and mild weather, 60 degrees, partly sunny. I think we can all live with that. And don't forget to download the latest version of the Fox 29 Weather Authority app to have the latest weather right at your fingertips. And moving on to local news, happening today, the funeral procession for Philadelphia firefighter Michael Bernstein began at 8 a.m. this morning from engine 22 at Academy and Conley Roads. And it proceeded south on Academy, ending at Givenish Funeral Home. That's where a viewing is being held until 11:30 before Bernstein is laid to rest at Resurrection Cemetery in Bensalem. Bernstein died Wednesday after suffering a medical emergency on the job. Bensalem schools are closing early today to mourn the loss of Michael Bernstein. The high schools will close at 11:30 a.m., the middle schools will close at noon, and elementary schools will close at 1 o'clock. And in other local news this morning, a crash involving a tractor-trailer carrying dish soap shut down the Pennsylvania Turnpike eastbound for 5 hours last night and into this morning. The truck was loaded with liquid dish detergent and hit debris in the road when it hit an overpass. All traffic was forced off at Downingtown, exit 312, and was shut down all the way to the Valley Forge exit 326.
Did anybody hear me?
Crews worked all night on cleaning up the mess, putting ash and salt on the roadway to clear up the soap, forming jelly in the cold temperatures, according to first responders. The roads finally opened back up and traffic started flowing at around 8 a.m. this morning. And back to local news. Devastated, heartbroken, and in disbelief, a community is mourning the loss of 3 beloved friends who tragically lost their lives in a house fire. The fire broke out just after 4:30 yesterday morning on the 2900 block of Rohrer Street. 70 firefighters battled the flames, but they were forced to retreat after the home was declared unstable. In the end, the fire claimed their lives. Friends have identified them as Francis Jocko Hudson, his brother Jason, and Jason's fiancée, Becky.
All of us had each other's backs.
They grew up here. They had it as tough as anybody else is ever going to have it here. And they would teach you more about yourself than you could ever do for them.
The cause of the fire remains under investigation. And sticking with local news, police released video of a car they believe is connected to a shooting that left a 25-year-old man dead Friday morning on North 52nd Street in West Philadelphia. They are looking for this mid to late 2000 Chrysler 300 with black tinted windows. The rear passenger door is missing the molding, and there's a dent on the rear passenger side wheel well. Police say the person driving this car should be considered armed and dangerous. And in Berks County, a woman is accused of abusing a 5-year-old girl. Police say Catherine Hallowell was the child's sole caregiver at the time. The child suffered a traumatic brain injury on Friday. Doctors concluded the girl's injuries were caused by significant and violent force. Hallowell is being charged with 3 counts of aggravated assault and endangering the welfare of a child. Her bail has been set at $200,000. And in Delaware County, prescriptions, bills, personal letters, items you would expect to get in the mail, unless you live in one Ridley Township neighborhood. Neighbors on Crum Creek Drive in Woodland started an online petition calling for the U.S. Postal Service to assign them a new carrier. They say for the past 6 months, many of them received the wrong mail or didn't receive any at all. And despite repeated complaints, residents say nothing has been done.
I have tax documents that didn't show up.
I'm paying bills and they're coming back to me.
In a statement, the USPS apologized, saying, quote, "The Postal Service appreciates its customers and strives to provide excellent service. When a mail service issue occurs, we take steps to quickly resolve customer concerns." And back in Philadelphia, we now know the reason 3 dental practices were shut down months ago. The Philadelphia Department of Public Health says patients were exposed to unsanitary conditions. Fox 29's Lauren Johnson filed this report.
Well, here's the deal. They're closed down indefinitely, and that's because the health department here on Market Street has said they should not be open based on what's happening inside. And if you went to the True Family Dental yesterday, like we did, we saw this handwritten notice up on the door. Sorry, the office is closed due to an emergency, and it gives customers a phone number to call, but it doesn't say what the emergency is. It's a shutdown. Health officials were tipped off to the unsafe and unsanitary conditions at all 3 of their locations. The offices were initially officially closed back on December 7, 2018. Since that time, the health department has tried working with that staff to update their infection control practices, re-educate them, and obtain patient lists. And because of the findings, the practices put the safety of patients at risk, and now health leaders are encouraging them to be tested for hepatitis B, C, and even HIV. At this time, there is no known knowledge of infections, and they believe the risk of infection is low, but they still want those patients who were seen at either of those 3 clinics in 2017 or 2018 to be aware. So you know where you've gone if you've gone to these clinics, but you might have a lot of questions. So the health department has set up a hotline for anyone. That phone number, 215-218-2999. Those phone lines are open Monday through Friday from 9 o'clock until 5 p.m. The health department does tell us that they will be manning those phones to answer any questions. They also say these offices will not be allowed to reopen until they handle everything on the long list that they have to handle.
And thank you, Lauren, for that report. And we're going to be moving to some political news now. House Democrats are holding their weekly availability for reporters, so let's get to that now.
It is part of the For the People agenda the Democrats promised and are delivering on. And with that, we'll open it to questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
As you guys talk about the healthcare issue this morning, though, there's so much focus on what Republicans are trying to do, trying to get this procedural vote in the Senate on the Green New Deal. You say your side has the upper hand on the healthcare issues, but do issues like that, other policy issues which may be some too far afield, does that capture the attention? And anything you try to do on some of these bread and butter issues like healthcare, does that supersede that message?
We're not interested in who has the upper hand politically. We're interested in making sure that we protect the health care of the American people. We were sent to Washington to get that done. We should be able to do it in a bipartisan way. There are a whole host of issues that we as members of the House and the Senate are going to be called upon to address. Climate change is certainly one of them. This week we're focused on lowering health care costs and increasing pay for everyday Americans and making sure that there is equal pay for equal work.
Mr. Jeffries, Rashida Tlaib is circulating into your colleague letter focused on impeachment around issues that are not related to the Mueller investigation. Is that helpful?
We didn't run on impeachment. We didn't win the House of Representatives on impeachment. We're not focused on impeachment. What is clear is that the overwhelming majority of the House Democratic caucus want to drive our For the People agenda, which is why we're going to vote out of the House of Representatives this week the Paycheck Fairness Act, introduce legislation to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, continue to work on lowering the high cost of life-saving prescription drugs, and at some point enact a real infrastructure plan, not the fake one that Donald Trump introduced.
The vote today to override the president's veto on the emergency declaration resolution, is that the end of the road for this fight if you guys don't have sufficient support to override it?
We'll see what happens in terms of the vote today. Certainly everyone that cares about the United States Constitution, as many of my Republican colleagues profess to do, should be alarmed at this presidential overreach. This is not a dictatorship, it's a democracy. Congress is a separate and co-equal branch of government. Pursuant to Article 1 of the Constitution, we have the power of the purse. And that prerogative has been invaded by Donald Trump. And that's why we're hopeful that we can override this veto in a bipartisan fashion.
Should Democrats release a full 10-year budget proposal? And if so, would you expect it to raise revenue?
Well, I'm going to leave that decision to Chairman John Yarmuth. He's in discussions right now with members of the Budget Committee, leadership, as well as the House Democratic Caucus. We want to figure out how we can move forward and find common ground. But here's what we're not going to do. We are not going to allow the president to move a budget forward that cuts $2 trillion out of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. That's unconscionable.
Yeah, I would just like to underscore what the chairman just said, that as we in Appropriations Committee are looking at the budget that the president just set, we see devastation to those economic issues to families at home, starting with going back on the promise the president made repeatedly in his campaign, that it was hands off. We would not touch Medicare, Social Security, or Medicaid. And at the same time that he professes that, we see $2 trillion in cuts. And very particularly, my discussion with Secretary Azar was about the impact of that on the opioid crisis. Because we know Medicaid is how most people in this country access treatment for addiction. So if this president is serious about that, if he is serious about investing and helping us combat the opiate crisis, it is the completely wrong place to start by narrowing in on Medicaid expansion states and making that less available when we know that has tripled access to recovery treatment for people who use Medicaid. States that have expanded have seen startling results in the right direction. This president wants to not only go back on his promises around Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, but it will have a particular impact on the ability to combat this opioid crisis that is so devastating to constituents in my district and across this country.
Sure.
I noticed that in your remarks this morning you didn't mention the Mueller report and the way forward after the Mueller report. And I'm wondering, A, why didn't you mention it? And B, what is the way forward now after the Mueller report?
Well, at this point, the ball is in the court of the Attorney General. 6 committee chairs have sent a letter requesting that the Mueller report be released to the public, as well as the underlying documentation, no later than Tuesday, April 2nd.
But how much energy will House Democrats and the leadership of the Secure expend on pushing?
Well, I think as evidenced by the opening remarks that I delivered and as evidenced by the opening remarks that Vice Chair Clark delivered, we're going to continue to focus on the issues that are of importance to the American people. House Democrats are focused on kitchen, table, pocketbook issues involving lower health care costs and increased pay for everyday Americans. We were very clear when we had our closing conversation with the American people about what exactly we would focus on in connection with our For the People agenda. Nowhere in the For the People agenda does it talk about Russia. Nowhere in the For the People agenda does it talk about collusion. Nowhere in the For the People agenda does it talk about obstruction of justice. The For the People agenda is about lowering health care costs for the American people, strengthening the Affordable Care Act, protecting people with pre-existing conditions, increased pay, and a real infrastructure plan. That's what House Democrats are focused on today, tomorrow, and for the rest of this congressional session.
I was just going to say, that sounds like a shift. I mean, Speaker Pelosi was out there constantly pushing this message of what does Donald Trump have, what does Putin have on Trump financially? Let's look at his tax returns. It looks like Chairman Neal is teed up and ready to go with this formal request. So, I mean, when you talk about issues of importance, isn't the president's financial ties to Russia and where the rest of this investigation goes, isn't that still a priority for Democrats?
The first, and I'm going to yield to Vice Chair Clark, the first hearing that Elijah Cummings had this year was on lowering the high cost of life-saving prescription drugs. The first hearing that Chairman Frank Pallone had this year was on strengthening the Affordable Care Act. The first hearing that Chairman Richie Neal had this year was on protecting people with pre-existing conditions. In fact, Nancy Pelosi several weeks ago was very clear, indicating she ain't interested in this impeachment thing. And did House Democrats agree with her or disagree? House Democrats agreed with her perspective. That was before we knew what was or was not in the Mueller investigation. So we've been entirely consistent. Oh, sorry, Catherine Clark.
I just want the word you use, shift. There is a shift. There is a shift from the Republican majority that focused on the very wealthiest Americans and large corporations and making sure that they were doing okay. That was the emphasis of the tax bill that passed last year. That's the emphasis of their economic policies. And that is the shift that you have seen with Democrats in the majority. We are focused on putting those issues that American families care about and talk about around their kitchen tables back on the front burner in Congress. And at the same time, we are going to live up to our Article 1 responsibilities of oversight, which the Republicans absolutely failed to do. So there is a shift. There's a shift to returning power to the American voters. There is a shift to concentrating on those issues that matter to their families and matter to their economics at home. That's the shift that's happening. That is a shift that we are unwavering from.
I know what you obviously want to talk about. Are you worried that the Mueller investigation, Mueller report, and some of these other investigations are overshadowing the issues that you actually want to focus on? Concerned at all that might make it harder for the Supreme Court with voters?
No. So over the last 2 years, there was a lot of emphasis by some on the Russian investigation, its implications. In many cases, that's all you would see on certain outlets. But we, as House Democrats, focus on protecting people with pre-existing conditions, lowering health care costs, and our candidates all across the country were talking about kitchen table, bread and butter, pocketbook issues, while some in this town were obsessed with the Russian investigation. Now, based on that precedent, you would expect there was no way we were going to be able to break through in district after district after district and win control of the House of Representatives. But we won control of the House of Representatives, not focused on Russia, not focused on collusion, not focused on impeachment, not focused on obstruction of justice, but focused on health care and on infrastructure and on cleaning up corruption in Washington, D.C. That is why we're focused on those issues now that we're in the majority.
I just would like to add that it took this administration one day, one work day, to flip back to their true agenda and one of their true priorities, which is taking away health care from millions of Americans. One day it took them to get back on their message of what they're truly trying to do to American families.
Back.
Have you heard anything back from the Attorney General about when you might receive the full report? Have Democrats heard back? And what happens if you don't receive it by April 2nd? What do you do then?
We have not heard back, as far as I understand it. I assume that that response will be directed to the 6 committee chairs who authored the letter. We'll see what occurs. We're all hopeful that, consistent with the overwhelming public sentiment of the American people, the full and complete Mueller report will be released by April 2nd. The House voted 420 to 0 to publicly disclose the Mueller report. The President has said repeatedly the Mueller report should be disclosed. The overwhelming majority of the American people, including majorities of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, have said the Mueller report should be disclosed. We expect that the Attorney General will disclose it no later than April 2nd.
You and the Judiciary Committee have talks with each other or with DOJ about scheduling testimony for General Barr or Special Counsel Mueller? Do you have any sense for what time frame you got?
I think the first step, as Jerry Nadler has indicated, is to receive the report, and then we'll proceed thereafter with the possibility of testimony from the Attorney General, from the Deputy Attorney General, or others who may be relevant, consistent with our oversight responsibilities. Go to the back.
Yes, so after the veto override vote, what are the next steps? Has the House decided whether it will take legal action? Will it let it be to the dozens of states that have filed lawsuits? What are the next steps?
We're focused right now on seeing what happens on the floor, and then collectively the leadership will decide how we proceed from there.
Senator Schumer spent, Senator Graham spent quite a bit of time with reporters yesterday talking about how he was going to do a deep dive on the FISA waiver issue and other things related. He called it the other side of the story in this whole episode. How do you see that playing out for Democrats? Are you concerned that there could be a very focused effort on the Democratic side of things and how this investigation got started in the first place? Just what do you think about that?
Well, Lindsey Graham spent years as the sidekick to John McCain. And then Donald Trump gets elected. And Donald Trump continues to bash John McCain in reprehensible ways. And Lindsey Graham on the issue is in the witness protection program. So he should resolve that issue before he wants to lecture Democrats on our responsibility as a separate and co-equal branch of government in the House.
And I would just like to add to that, I would say to Lindsey Graham, 37 indictments. 37 indictments coming out of this investigation. I think that he should proceed with caution if he really wants to examine this entire investigation again and put his president that he defends through thick or thin back in the spotlight with his involvement. It's part of the reason that we need to see this full report to understand the evidence that went into this. But when this investigation yielded 37 indictments, many of those, at least 6 or 7 of those, the closest advisors to this president, we welcome that scrutiny.
Let me also just add, 17 different intelligence agencies concluded that Russia interfered with the election and attacked our democracy as part of an effort to try and artificially place Donald Trump at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. These 17 different intelligence agencies aren't filled with warm and fuzzy liberals. These are national security types dedicated to the safety and well-being of the American people. Every single major player connected to the Mueller investigation, as far as I can tell, is a Republican. James Comey is a Republican. The current FBI director, Christopher Wray, who presided over the investigation on the FBI side, is a Republican. Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General who appointed the special counsel, is a Republican. Bob Mueller, who presided over the investigation into Russia's interference with the election, is a Republican. Was this a vast right-wing Republican conspiracy? That perhaps is the question that Lindsey Graham should spend his time addressing. Last question.
When you guys talk about wanting the full Mueller report, I want to clarify something. Are you not comfortable with it being scrubbed for classified information or for the grand jury information?
It is a reasonable thing to make sure that if there are sources and methods that could potentially be disclosed in the Mueller report, that those are redacted in the interest of national security. With respect to potential grand jury testimony, the standard has traditionally been that the presumption of secrecy can be overcome if there is a compelling public interest. In this case, with Russia's attack on our democracy and the potential cooperation with members of the Trump campaign having been the subject of the investigation, there was certainly a compelling national interest. Thank you.
And back to some local news. In February, several states pulled more than 80 students out of the Glen Mills School following an explosive report in the Philadelphia Inquirer that revealed allegations of physical and verbal abuse and cover-ups at the Delaware County campus. Since then, that investigation has expanded, and now the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services is ordering an emergency removal of all children from the Glen Mills School. In the Inquirer report, boys and their parents say they were threatened to keep quiet about the violence they were forced to endure at the hands of school staff, with the school being the oldest existing reform school in the U.S. Now, several state agencies have opened investigations, and all 64 remaining students have been ordered out. The reporter who first brought this story to light, Lisa Gartner, joined Good Day Philadelphia this morning.
Okay, let's get to this. Kind of shocking yesterday. Back, let's see, a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, we told you about several states pulling more than 80 students out of the Glen Mills School in Delco. It came following an explosive report in the Philadelphia Inquirer revealing allegations of physical and verbal abuse and cover-ups at the campus.
Since then, that investigation has expanded, and now the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services is ordering an emergency removal of all children from Glen Mills School.
In the Inquirer report, as you look at some of the buildings on this campus, boys and their parents claim they were threatened to keep quiet about the violence they were forced to endure at the hands of staff at the school, which is the oldest existing reform school in the United States. And boys from around the country are sent there. I mean, from many, many states. Now, several state agencies have opened investigations, and all remaining 64 students have been ordered to leave the campus.
So joining us this morning is a reporter who first brought this story to light, Lisa Gardner. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so remind the people who maybe don't know about this story. What were some of the alleged abuses going on there, physical and verbal?
The things I found in my reporting included boys being punched, kicked, slapped, slammed to the floor. One boy made a joke about a counselor's sister, and they stepped on his face, breaking his jaw. It had to be wired shut.
Okay, so now...
And the fact these allegations you're mentioning are the things that were happening, they have been going on for years.
Yes, I talked to boys, now men, who were at the school decades ago and suffered extreme abuse that they're still affected by.
So why do you think it was kept quiet? Because some would say, well, apparently it's effective, you know, trying to change the behavior of some of these young men.
Well, it was kept quiet. They told them, the boys and their mothers and guardians, that if they told, they would be sent somewhere worse. You know, Glen Mills has such a prestigious reputation, surely anywhere else it would be even worse, or that their sentences would restart, which isn't true if they went somewhere else.
But there's also the fact that this was an open secret. So people did know, administration knew, but nobody said anything. So what do you think the difference is? The fact that it's now getting out to more people and people are reacting to hearing these about the abuse?
I think what we were able to do in the Inquirer is bring together a critical mass. You know, it's not just one boy speaking out to his parole officer, to his mother. It's all of them together, counselors, and I think we were able to show the systems in place that kept boys from being able to speak up.
So at the highest level, how many boys do you think were on that campus?
Oh,
Hundreds, right?
At its peak, there were more than 1,000 boys at the Glen Mills Schools. It's the oldest existing reform school in the country. It draws students from California, Texas, Maryland, just all over.
But then authorities in those states said, we need to get these boys out of there, you know, and so they got down to 64 boys left on this big campus. So now I think Alex asked you this, what prompted this
strong stance all
this
of a sudden?
stance to get all 64 guys out of there immediately?
Well, many judges across the country withdrew their boys after reading our investigation. So that's how they got down to the 64 to begin with. The state Department of Human Services began investigating and corroborated our findings in a removal order that they sent yesterday. So when the state was able to confirm that, yes, these decades of abuse were happening, that there was coercion. One boy, after his eye was injured in an assault, was told to say that he injured it playing basketball. The state felt that they had to act in the immediate removal of these boys.
And when you say immediate, I mean, it's still probably going to take a while because these students, they live there. They probably have to find other arrangements. So what's going to happen in the meantime?
The state is on site monitoring the situation until all these boys are off campus. They're working with the boys' home counties and states to get them into new placements. Many of them will be able to go home in community supervision.
Is this the end of Glen Mills School? I guess you could get a new administration in there and turn things around.
The Department of Human Services is continuing to investigate, and they potentially could decide to revoke the school's license.
Well, I mean, how are they going to make any money? I mean, there's nobody there now.
What do you do? Even if you had money, if there's no students, I mean, is it a school if there are no students?
I have put that question to the school. I have not had an answer yet.
Yeah. Did they put out a statement yesterday? Did you hear?
I was told that they were just learning of the decision of the state, and they were deciding how to proceed. They have 10 days to appeal the removal order, but the state can begin, you know, yesterday removing the boys.
So they might be gone by the time they get to appeal.
That's correct.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for your reporting.
Hard work.
Appreciate it.
And we're going to be switching gears now to outside a courthouse in California where former Empire star Jussie Smollett and his lawyers are expected to speak following an emergency court appearance. Stay tuned.
Come over here, Kenny. All right.
I just did 2.5 hours of jiu-jitsu training this morning. This is a good time to get me. I'm tired.
It's okay, Bruce Lee.
Come right after the big guns.
Yeah, they know. They saw it kicking out of your pants.
He's in Orlando with the kid.
Oh, that's right. Captain, who's captain?
Well, Bill told me that he's 10 minutes. He's 20 minutes away, which means
An hour. There he is. Get a picture. It's got a bone leg. Bad leg. Wasting time. 5 years for the fucking waste of time.
yeah, that. Probably the lead driver.
Oh, they do it by episode. There's only so many episodes.
It's still $1.8 million a year.
That wasn't enough.
Even if you do another job, you don't know it's not the job.
And it looks like Jussie Smollett himself isn't expected to speak for quite a while. Estimated time is 11:45 a.m. So that is going to do it for us today at Fox 29 News Now. You can catch us again same time tomorrow, 10 a.m. for the latest breaking local and national news. Thanks for watching.